Coast Hello Crafters! We are back again with another tutorial for DIY weave coasters. Today we'll be learning how to make these elegant cloud-like coasters. This craft kit can be used to create 4 small coasters. Each coaster has a unique pattern, but the yarn colors used are the same. We'll use 4 different colors of yarn, and the weaving method is similar for all. First, we'll use single-strand plain weave to create the central pattern, followed by reverse double half hitches to secure the top and bottom. Finally, we'll glue the ends and attach an anti-slip mat on the back. And that's it! I'll demonstrate the first design in detail, and you can follow the patterns to create the other 3. Let's start by looking at the materials and tools we'll need. For this project, we'll use 2mm 3-ply cotton ropes in pineapple yellow, bean sprout yellow, cream white, and sky blue. Now let's begin. Take out the small tape measure and open it, locating the 1 cm mark. Then take the 1mm cream white 3-ply cotton rope, which will serve as the warp thread for this project. Find the end of the rope and align it with the 1 cm mark on the tape measure, holding them in place with your fingers. When measuring, make sure to keep the rope relaxed, as pulling it too tightly will cause it to shrink after cutting, making it shorter than needed. As you measure, let the rope stay loose and adjust the tension by pulling out more rope if it feels tight. Measure out 1.5 meters, then fold it in half to get a 3-meter-long warp thread. Continue measuring from the 1 cm mark for an additional 50 centimeters, and then cut the rope with U-shaped scissors. This will give you a 3.5-meter-long warp thread. Set it aside for now. Take the small weaving board and examine its structure. You'll notice 12 small grooves on both the top and bottom edges, with a hollow center and smooth edges on the sides. This is the basic design of the weaving board we'll use. Next, let's thread the warp. Take the 3.5-meter long rope you just prepared and find one end. Locate the groove between the first and second notches on the bottom right corner of the board. Place the short end of the rope on the right and the long end on the left. Loop the short end up from underneath through the groove, and do the same with the long end. Then tie 3 knots to secure it tightly. Use the U-shaped scissors to cut off the excess short end, securing the starting point. Thread the rope through the second groove, flip the board, and bring the rope up through the second groove from underneath. Align it with the corresponding second groove at the top, loop it to the back, and secure it on the second peg. Thread it through the third groove, returning to the front. Continue threading the rope in this pattern, ensuring the tension is balanced, not too tight or too loose. Proper tension will make the weaving process smoother and the final product more aesthetically pleasing. Repeat this process until all grooves are threaded. Once done, examine the threading. The top and bottom of the board each have 12 grooves. The first groove on the left is empty, the second has 1 thread, the next 9 grooves each have 2 threads, and the last groove on the right has 1 thread. To finish, thread the remaining short end through the bottom right groove and cross it over the adjacent warp thread, securing it with a knot. Be careful not to pull it too tightly to avoid disrupting the spacing. Trim the excess thread, and your warp setup is complete. Now, take the pattern sheet and U-shaped scissors to cut out the desired shape along its edges. Use alcohol glue to attach the pattern to the back of the weaving board. Let's look at how to use alcohol glue. The glue bottle has a 2-layer cap. Cut open the top layer with scissors, taking care not to injure yourself as the material is hard. After cutting, remove the connecting piece at the cap and keep the bottle sealed when not in use to prevent evaporation. This glue is safe and mild, suitable for children. If it gets on your hands, let it dry and peel it off without worry. Gently squeeze the bottle and apply glue dots to the numbered areas on both sides of the pattern. Ensure the numbers are oriented correctly. Flip the weaving board and the pattern sheet to their back sides and align the bottom edge of the pattern with the bottom of the board. Press down lightly to secure it. Flip back to the front to check that the pattern aligns with the warp threads. The pattern may be slightly lower. The cotton rope is a light, creamy, white color. Unwind the rope and find the loose end. Hold it at the 1 centimeter mark and use a flexible measuring tape to measure the length. Be sure not to pull the rope too tight. Try to keep it in line with the length of the measuring tape to get an accurate 1 meter measurement. Cut the rope, and you will have a 1 meter long creamy white rope. Using this method, measure another 1 meter length of pineapple yellow rope, so now you have 2 1 meter long ropes. We will start with the pineapple yellow rope for this project. Take the weaving board with the pasted design, pinch the end of the rope, and thread it through the eye of a long needle. We will be using a single strand of thread. The rope should pass through the needle until there is a long and short portion. Take the longer end of the rope, pass it through the gap on the left side of the first warp thread, and tie a loop knot at the left edge of the wooden board. Be careful not to tie a knot that is too tight, as it will need to be undone later. Fold the rope to the right, and we will begin weaving a reverse double loop knot in the first row. Let's look at how this is done. Find the gap on the right side of the first warp thread and pass the needle from the bottom, going from right to left. Gently pull it tight, leaving a small loop. Then pass the needle through this loop and tighten it. The knot should be positioned at the top edge of the weaving board, not on the wooden part of the board. Tighten the middle cross thread to the appropriate position, pressing it with your thumb to prevent the rope from shifting. Be sure the warp threads are properly aligned with the top portion. If the left and right sides are tilted, it means the middle cross thread is too tight or too loose. Press it and repeat the process. Pass the needle through the right side of the first warp thread again, pulling it through the loop and tightening the rope. Now you can press the knot and pull on the rope to achieve a tight finish. You will see a small slanted line. This completes one double loop knot. Now find the second warp thread and repeat the process. Remember, when the loops cross like this, untangle them and pass the rope through. It is important to ensure the two warp threads remain parallel, so pay attention to the tightness of the rope when tightening it. Don't pull it too tight, which would cause the warp threads to press together, and don't leave it too loose either, as that would affect the result. When weaving, tighten the rope to the proper position, hold it with your fingers, and continue weaving the second half of the double loop knot. Adjust the knot so that there is a space of about 5 millimeters between them, which is ideal. Continue with the third double loop knot. Now 3 double loop knots are complete. You can see that the angles of the rope are roughly parallel and the width between the knots is consistent. Follow this method to weave until you reach the end of the yellow section. This long needle is for adult use. If children are doing this, it is recommended to replace the long needle with a large-eyed needle, as they serve the same purpose and are easier for children to use. By now, the length and pattern of the weaving should match the yellow area. Now, switch to the creamy white rope. Similarly, pass the rope through the needle so it is in a long and short configuration, and find the corresponding position on the back, leaving a 5 centimeter end. Use the same method to create a double loop knot. Be careful not to tighten the rope too much the first time. Tighten it so that the knot is pressed against the edge of the weaving board. Then continue weaving the second half of the reverse double loop knot. Continue to weave the reverse double loop knots in a curved manner. After finishing the first row of reverse double loop knots, you'll notice the thread is facing down. Take the first warp thread on the left, press the second one, and continue weaving in the same method as before. Since a large-eyed needle is used here, the length is limited, so after threading a few warp threads, you will need to pull the rope through and adjust its position. Be careful not to pull the rope too tightly, as it can cause the edge warp threads to tilt or deform. Ensure the warp threads stay in place while tightening the rope. Continue threading according to the pattern. After completing one row, use a cloud comb to comb the finished threads downward, ensuring they are close to the base of the reverse double loop knots. Now, the first row of plain weave is complete. If using a long needle, it works the same way. The long needle is more efficient because it can pass through more warp threads at once. In this case, the last thread in the first row is below the warp threads, so when weaving the second row, start by pressing down on one warp thread and then lifting the next one. Thread the cord to the back and comb it neatly, filling the gap on the left side. Flip to the back, leave about 5 centimeters of thread, and cut it. Flip back to the front, rethread, and start weaving again. Begin from the left side of the third warp thread, threading the cord through the back. Press the thread tail under the weaving board and start weaving. When reaching this point, wrap the thread tail around the gold thread on the far left. After wrapping, place the thread tail to the back and hide it. Then take a new thread to continue weaving. At this stage, the bean sprout yellow section is fully woven. Do not cut the excess thread yet. If the remaining thread is too short, unravel 2 to 3 rows and replace it with a 1 meter long thread to make the remaining thread longer. Next, weave reverse double knots. Unlike the bottom, these knots are woven to the left. Here's the method. Hold the needle with your left hand. With your right hand, holding the thread, guide the thread end to the right. Pass the needle under the first warp thread on the right, and then through the loop formed, pulling the thread tight. Repeat once more, tightening the thread. This completes 1 reverse double knot. Use the same method. Weave reverse double knots 1 by 1. After finishing, remove the needle and set the thread aside. Then take 1 meter long dark blue and off-white threads. Using the same method, complete the corresponding sections. Finally, weave reverse double knots on the off-white section. The coaster is now fully completed. Next, handle the thread ends on the back. Flip to the back and remove the pattern diagram. Take scissors and trim the thread ends shorter, leaving about 1.5 centimeters. Return to the front and cut the left side off-white thread short. Thread the right side thread into a large eye needle and pass it through the off-white loop on the right side. Pull it to the back, connecting the off-white and dark blue threads. Flip to the back. Trim the threads short and untwist the thread ends, dividing them into 3 strands. This reduces the thickness when gluing the thread ends. Apply alcohol glue to the spot where the thread ends need to be glued, pressing the thread ends into place. Apply a small amount of alcohol glue to the thread ends on the front as well. Trim any excess threads. If the thread ends are not secure, apply more alcohol glue to fix them. Repeat this process to handle the remaining thread ends. When handling the edge thread ends, ensure the tension of the loops is consistent when placing the thread ends to the back. Avoid pulling too tight. Pulling too tight may damage the edge's shape, making it uneven from the front. Keep the loop tension consistent to maintain a neat edge. Once all the thread ends on the back are glued, leave a 2 cm length, cut the gold thread, and cut open the other side's loops. After trimming, flip to the back and apply alcohol glue to the back. Fold the thread ends downward and glue them to the back. Use only a small amount of glue, spreading it evenly. You can use the bottle's tip to apply the glue and press the thread ends firmly one by one. Ensure the front edge remains smooth. With this, all the thread ends on the back are secured. Next, attach the anti-slip pads. Apply alcohol glue to the back of the coaster. Apply more glue near the edges for stronger adhesion. Once applied, take out the anti-slip pad. One set of anti-slip pads is enough for 4 coasters. So, when making the first coaster, position the pad close to the edge. Use the bottle bottom to gently tap and press it down. It's normal for glue to seep through the mesh. After pressing, wait 3 to 5 minutes for the alcohol glue to dry. If the glue bottle bottom becomes sticky with glue, use a tissue to clean it. Once dried, it won't stick. Take scissors and trim the anti-slip pad. When trimming, stay as close to the coaster edge as possible. After trimming, flip to the front to check. If the anti-slip pad is visible, trim it again. Ensure the pad is not exposed from the front. If any areas are not securely glued, apply more alcohol glue and wait another 3 to 5 minutes for it to dry. This completes the coaster. The remaining 3 coaster designs can be made using the same method. Feel free to make them on your own. Enjoy your newly created coasters!